is recording.
Wonderful. Brilliant. So we're now recording?
Yep, it's recording.
Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. It's great to see so many of you, some familiar faces and also some new faces. So that's a welcome to everyone. In this session today, we are going to be talking about Package Manager, which is clearly a very interesting topic for a lot of people. So I'm very excited to have Rob here to talk to us more about that. So if we go through, so my name's Kerry Townsend. I have been working in the marketing cloud space probably for a good 5 years now. I am doing more freelance stuff. You can usually find me on Twitter. Over the last maybe couple of months, I may have fallen off social media a bit on the run up to an event, but I hope to be back on social channels now. And my co-host is Jimson.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jimson Lee. I'm with Cloud Analyst. I'm the Marketing Cloud subject matter expert. So Cloud Analyst is a registered Salesforce partner based in Brighton, London, and Manchester. And we also have some global experts around the world that help us out. I guess I'm known as the Marketing Cloud guy, but I really like to tell people that we're really cross-cloud. I have a lot of experience with Service Cloud, a lot of experience with the new WhatsApp messaging, both Service Cloud as well as Marketing Cloud. So any kind of cross-cloud implementation, just feel free to reach out to me and I can share you some of the stories. And that's it.
Cool. Thanks, Jimson. So we're going to follow the usual format here today. So we've got a few announcements at the beginning and then we'll just get right into it, into the main talk, which I know that everybody is really excited about. And then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. So as Jimson suggested, if you have questions as we're going through the talk, please add them to the chat so you don't forget them and we don't miss them. And then we'll work through some of those, but at various times, when questions are invited, you're obviously welcome to take yourself off mute, introduce yourself, and then ask your question. So we want this to be, at least the question and answer section, to be a nice interactive session so we can really get into the sorts of questions that people are after. So in terms of some announcements or some general information, this is a slide that talks about where to connect with us in between these meetings. So we look to meet monthly, and it's usually the second Thursday of every month, but sometimes that shifts around. So we meet in person where we chat about topics, but equally in between that time, there is a collaboration group on the Salesforce community, which I hope all of you are familiar with, at least the community. So you can find us at the London Cloud Marketing Group. And I've got a bit.ly link there, but if you just go into trailblazer.salesforce.com and go into the collaboration groups and search for London Marketer, you'll be able to find us. And some of you may or may not know, but a recent update is that the Trailhead Go now app, which you can use on your mobile phone to do Trailhead, now has a community section, which means that you can now look at the community groups within that mobile app. So that was always a bit of a challenge on the go. If you wanted to look on your phone, you'd need to access the normal web browser, but now that's all available on your phone. So it's quite a useful update. So anybody that hasn't made that update yet, you might find that useful. We have a YouTube channel, which is called SFMC London, where we post all of these recordings from the previous events. And we have been doing these online and recorded events since April last year. So there is a body of those which you can go back and take a look at. And then we also have a Twitter handle. I have to be honest, this is not super well utilized. It typically only has the announcements of when the next event is. But if you're on Twitter, then that might be a good place to get information from us. In terms of the next meeting, we are looking at the 13th of May. So again, there might be some flexibility in that, but that's typically where we're going. At some point in the future, which may be May or a little bit in the future, we're looking to run another demo time. So I don't know whether many of you joined us back in, I think it was October. that we did it, where it's a take on the standard demo Salesforce demo jam, but in this instance we give the companies a little bit longer so we can go into a little bit more detail. And specifically, we're looking at the ones that are marketing related. So if you use any apps from the App Exchange in Marketing Cloud and you think that other people should know about them, then we'd love to get recommendations for those particular companies. We have a couple in mind, and it's just a case of lining that all up, which means it's not as simple as us just deciding which date we want to do and making that happen. But Jimson, you also had some other topics that we might be talking about. Did you want to say something about those?
Yeah, I think we like to hear what you want to do. So if you want to see or hear about a topic, just let us know. We struggle, to be honest, on topics because we don't know what you want. We can go really high level, like a Salesforce slide deck. We can go really deep dive and make it super technical. We can go halfway in the middle. I know we had one suggestion of like a 1 hour crash course on AmpScript and Cloud Pages. We have one of our marketing champions out in the US that could do that. So unless you let us know what you want to see, you're at the mercy of myself and Carrie to decide what you'll see, right? So, it's up to you. We do this for you guys, not. I mean, we know Marketing Cloud, so but we want to know what you want to see, what you want to hear. So otherwise, you'll just be left with us, and that's it, really.
Yeah. So again, if you have any ideas in the chat, or if you just have any preference or just everything, if you just want to put a couple of words in the chat, like, deep dive, or, you'd like to know about AmpScript, or you'd like to know about SSJS, or, you want to know more about Journey Builder, like anything like that, even just a couple of words will help us. Otherwise, as you say, it'll be topics that Jimson and I would like to hear about, or we think that you want. So we just want to make sure that you know that door is always open for suggestions. And typically we would also highlight when the other London meetings are. So that's the dev and the admin meeting, because I know in some cases people work across clouds. They haven't announced their dates for April yet, but they're usually the 3rd or 4th week. And again, the developer group has a YouTube channel, and that again has lots and lots of their videos and content from. So if you're interested in any of those, in development on the Salesforce core platform, then that is a great place to go and look for resources. As I mentioned, I may have not really been on social media very much recently, and that is mainly because we've been on the run up to London's Calling. So I don't know if many of you actually attended the event itself, but if you did, there was in here for ticket holders at the moment, they can go back into the event app and actually watch the talks that were available on the day. And we will eventually move those talks over to the London's Calling YouTube channel. Which is relevant here because we had 8 different marketing talks, and this is just a quick highlight of some of those. So Sam talked about the connector, Lucy talked about requirements in Marketing Cloud, and there was a talk from Matt about benchmarking Pardot.orgs, and Mike talked about Pardot working in tandem for amazing results, right? So it's a mixture of the technologies, but both Marketing Cloud, and I know some of you, particularly if you work in a consulting environment, you'll possibly touch both. And then we had a number of other talks, and I think JB, you might also be on the call as well. So a shout out to you for talking at our event. But all of these will be available on YouTube in the coming months. So it won't be immediately, but we have we have all the talks for, I think it's pretty much the full 6 years on there. So do check that out if you're looking for more marketing content. And then coming on, and a little bit of a lead into why we're here today. So the April release, which has got some interesting parts in it, and I think is probably still is another quite rich release. I think the one that we're all interested in here is Packaging Manager. So very excited, but the release notes are now available. I appreciate that this is not the snappiest link in the world. But I think if you just Google release notes for April, you'll be able to find that. And there's also a release webinar, which is happening on the 22nd, I think, of April, which is available to sign up now. And last month, we had a question about where can I see the slides so I can get the links. And I will be loading these into, technically it's SlideShare, but then linking them into the past meetings. So I did that for March, and I will go back through all of our previous meetings and upload the slides so that when you go onto the Trailblazer Community Group.com page, which is where you signed up for this event, if you navigate back to our past events, you'll be able to see all the links for all the slides to get those in the future. But moving on to why we're all here this evening. So I'd like to introduce Rob Everetts, who has kindly joined us today all the way from over the pond to talk to us about Package Manager, which I can't tell you, I'm excited, right? So this is why I am super excited about this talk, and really just to share with us the thinking behind that, the vision, where it's going, what we might expect. So Rob, am I okay to hand over to you?
Absolutely, thank you.
Awesome, so I will stop sharing my slides.
All right,
And
let
allow
me
you
share mine
share
here.
yours.
Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you for inviting me today to speak to this group, and I'm excited as well. I know you're excited for the product, and we're excited to launch it. So my name is Rob Everetts. I'm Senior Product Manager at Salesforce, been with Salesforce for about 5.5 years. Been working on this charter for almost a year, and before that, I was for over 4.5 years. I was a product manager on Journey Builder, focusing on the UI UX experience in there. So this you'll see that we focused a lot on journeys in Package Manager to start. That's partly because of the knowledge base that we've had, and because of the focus that Salesforce Marketing Cloud has on that. But we'll go through what we're supporting today, what we're going to support in the future, and all that. But we're really excited to launch this feature that we think is going to really not only transform customers' experience with Marketing Cloud, but also on the consulting side. We think there's a big advantage for consultants and partners. So where did we start with this? Well, this really started last year in 2020 when when Salesforce was launching Work.com. And there was an ability there is an ability for Salesforce Core to really quickly package and deploy new custom features, if you will, and solutions around a particular use case. And they wanted to include Marketing Cloud in that, and we realized there's just no good way. There's no platform, there's no tool for Marketing Cloud to be able to do that, to say here are some recommended best practices that we want to roll out that are focused on a particular use case. So again, that was kind of the start of the idea. And what we have landed with, at least in the April release, so the April release starts rolling out this weekend and then continues next weekend, is the ability to export and import fully configured journeys, automations, content from Content Builder, data extensions, attribute groups, all of that stuff that goes into potentially fully configured solutions. That's really what we're calling it. Then is supported out of the gate. You may or may not be familiar with Deployment Manager, and Deployment Manager we get a lot of natural comparisons to that tool, which is on AppExchange. It was really conceived as a sandbox kind of replacement tool where you could just move some things from one environment to another, but it didn't support fully configured items, and that's kind of our biggest differentiator there. But it also allows customers as well as partners to share best practices. So in taking this this idea of solutions, we wanted to be able to share this across enterprise customers, right? So the ability to migrate fully configured items, not only across BUs within a customer, but across different EIDs across different customers, and that way you can create something that is kind of here's your welcome onboarding for your financial services customers, and you want to create that so that you can provide quick time to value for your customers out of the gate. So that's kind of the use case that we started with. But of course, it does solve some of the other use cases I mentioned, and it certainly allows those who have subject matter expertise in Marketing Cloud to be able to share that. This is included in Marketing Cloud, the Marketing Cloud product. It is not an AppExchange app. It is out there. It's free. It's available for all customers as of the April release, and it's in all editions. The one limitation there is right now you have to be an MC administrator in order to access the feature. One thing to note is that you also need to have the full read, write, edit permissions for all of the other items in order to be able to package and deploy all of those things. So for example, if you're trying to deploy a package that you've created and you don't have write access in Journey Builder, of course, then you wouldn't be able to create journeys. So that would be one blocker for you. But just be aware that you essentially, if you're going to package and deploy this in the first release, you need to be an MC administrator with pretty much full permissions. We will be working on granular permissions in an upcoming release, though. So again, I pointed out some comparison to Deployment Manager, and I wanted to quickly just kind of do a side-by-side. Deployment Manager is unconfigured journeys. We are fully configured journeys and automations, I should point out. And we do support Sales and Service Cloud events and activities. So if you have a particular Service Cloud example that is pointing to core objects and default fields, then you could easily create a solution for multiple customers that includes a Sales and Service Cloud entry event or activities. Content assets are supported. They were not supported at all in Deployment Manager. We understand that a lot of consultancies spend a lot of time manually recreating content assets across customers. And so that is, or across BUs if you're a customer individually. That was one of the primary targets of this tool out of the gate, was to be able to copy and deploy those content assets. I'm also going to show you some additional personalization. So while we support personalization strings and AMP script within those content assets, we also have kind of another special syntax that we have in Package Manager where you can roll out additional personalization. So I'll get into that when we go through the screens. The other cool feature about this is if you select a journey, we package everything that's already related to that journey for you. In other words, you don't have to go select the journey and then go separately select all of the emails and separately select the data extensions, et cetera. You just select the journey and the tool actually finds all of the related assets for you. So if it's got a data extension entry source, it pulls in that data extension. It pulls in all the data extensions that might be used in decision splits and an update contact activity. It will pull anything that is where you're referencing an AMP script, a data extension by its ID, then it will pull those data extensions as well. So we really do a fairly thorough job of finding any and everything related to a journey or an automation. I should point out automations are included in that as well. So if you have SQL query activities in an automation, for example, referencing certain data extension IDs, then we also will package that for you so that you can deploy that. And again, in Deployment Manager, you have to select all those items individually. So select the journey, then you have to know what data extensions are included there. You had to know what attribute groups, et cetera. And we just we find all that for you. And because it is built in as part of Salesforce Marketing Cloud product, it's fully supported by Salesforce support. So if you ever run into any issues, ever have any questions, you can contact support and get that support that you need. With AppExchange apps, those are not officially supported by Salesforce. So it was just dependent on whether the engineering team had the bandwidth to be able to look into issues. So we really think that this solves true fast scalability, right? I think you can see the value that it brings in terms of fully configured journeys, especially if you are a consultant trying to deploy a bunch of different assets for customers quickly, and you want to be able to roll that out. We think that you can focus pretty exclusively on that speed to market. So again, this is the idea of creating industry focused solutions. Right now, what we'll go through this when I go through the screens in a minute, but you're just downloading a zip file for now, but we eventually will be reaching the point where we can put these solutions or packages out on App Exchange. So you could create an industry focused solution for customers that then you put on App Exchange and you charge your customers for it. So you can really target your customers' needs at various points. You could create, beginning packages, kind of mid-level, kind of that crawl, walk, run, different stages of marketing, and you can create different solutions for those customers. You could even create just some template emails and just package template emails and put them out there. So again, I think this is really going to be able to help our partners be more effective at the strategy side of the best practice, the subject matter expertise side of Marketing Cloud. So let me walk through the screens really quickly. Well, maybe not really quickly. I tend to be pretty wordy. The feature of Package Manager shows up under the platform menu. You may or may not see the platform menu today. There are other apps that exist that can show under a platform, but not everybody has that in their account. But once we enable Package Manager in the release, you'll see the platform menu. So that may or may not be the only app you see there, but it's all built-in native part of Marketing Cloud. And once you click on that, you will be taken to the first kind of splash screen, and that is defaulting to journeys. As I mentioned, this is kind of where we started our initial focus because we do know that customers struggle to, that time to first journey activation or even the second or the third journey activation can be pretty long. Customers buy Marketing Cloud with the intention of seeing a lot of value out of it, but it can take months and months to actually realize that. And so, our initial focus is, how do we get these journeys copied and distributed quickly? So that's the splash screen. Journeys is the default view, but you can see along the left there that I have other object types available to me: automations, content assets, data extensions, and even attribute groups. So you can package any number of these items that you want to individually in a package file. You don't have to select a journey, but again, you don't have to then select all of the related items once you select those journeys. But you can certainly take journey and then unrelated items if you want to. Again, kind of the choice is yours. The tool allows you to be pretty flexible with this. We have heard some customers as well as some partners who want to package data models. Hey, my customers struggle, my banking customers struggle with figuring out just kind of the right way to structure things, but we know that 80% of our banking customers always go with this kind of structure. So you could package up automations, data extensions, attribute groups, and have that as a valuable, useful tool to get some of those customers up and running. In this particular example, I've selected 4 journeys. And up in the upper right, it actually tells me that I've selected 4 items. And so I will click Package 4 Items. And at this point, I get into kind of the creation flow of the package. The first option is to be able to preserve the folder structure. So this is a lot of customers who are migrating internally will want to preserve that folder structure. Again, thinking about that sandbox idea of here's my dev environment, my test environment, my production environment. They want to move that same folder structure in between environments, so everything's structured the same. But if you're a consultant and you're just deploying things, you may not want to affect their folder structures based on what you have in your origin environments. You can unselect or deselect that option, and that will actually create all the assets at the root level folder in the new account and whatever destination account you're putting it in. We will eventually have additional settings available here, but this is just the first one out of the gate at GA. At that point, the tool actually goes and does a quick scan to figure out what are all the dependencies related to those 4 journeys. So it starts at the top level and moves down. I chose 4 journeys that happen to have a lot of content and a lot of other things. This is just a static screenshot, but if I were able to scroll, this is a scrollable box, you would see once I scroll down, all the data extensions that are related to these 4 journeys, the event definitions that are associated with the entries, any of the attribute groups that are part of all of that would be included in this package. I wanted to also point out over to the right, there's this status column. I actually kind of screwed up a couple of my journeys intentionally so I could show you what a blocker might look like. A blocker could be that we have, there's something referenced in one of your emails, but we don't find the data extension. So that might be that you've got a personalization or an AMP script link that says, look at this data extension, but that data extension isn't in your environment. So that's a blocker because we need to be able to package that for you. So that is something that you can see. If you click on the word 8, or the phrase right here, click on 8 issues, it will actually pop open a little window and it'll list all 8 of those issues that you need to fix. The kind of yellow triangle ones are just warnings, just informational. They don't block you from packaging. And of course, then you have your green check marks. Some of the things that come up, and we've had this question. This will all be documented, by the way, in our help documentation that'll be going live this weekend. But for example, we don't copy shared assets as shared into the new environment. We have to deploy those as local assets, because again, if we're sharing these across enterprises, we don't know what the sharing structure is going to be. So we copy the assets as they are, but we don't copy them as shared. We then deploy them as local files. So there will be a little warning message for you in there just to alert you to that. At that point, you get to this screen where you can have default send classifications that you're going to have to define when you deploy the package. But the first one on here is also part of the custom fields that I mentioned before. And when I'm done walking through the screens, I'll show you the help documentation so you can understand the syntax and what I'm getting at here. But imagine that you maybe don't have that you have an email that does not have dynamic content, but you want to be able to deploy this across different customers, where those customers might have different company names, they have different logos, they have different URLs, but you want to keep the emails generally the same. So as you deploy this package to each of those individual customers, you could then create a field in that email where you're prompting them to input company name. So then I'm going to make a friendly label over here that might say input company name. You could even put a default value if you want to, but that's not required. You could then say company logo, and then when you're deploying the package, you could actually insert a logo URL, landing page, anything along those lines. Any text string basically that you want to put in there, including URLs, can be inserted in there. So that, again, it allows you to be able to customize this for multiple customers kind of on the fly. And that allows that sort of best practice subject matter expertise, for you to be able to save time when deploying across multiple customers. At this point, you would click, once I clicked save, then it would activate this download package button over here. Once I click download package, it creates a zip file and it puts that in my downloads folder. So now I have the package of the journeys that I created. At that point, back on the main package manager screen, actually, when you click download package, it takes you back to the main screen in package manager. There's a deploy button right next to the package button. So you would click deploy, and then you simply drag and drop that file that you just created into this zone. So this is probably in a new business unit, it may be in a new enterprise, new EID, wherever this may be. You're going to drag that file up into this area. It will upload that for you and unpackage it. And then it tells you what all is in there. So it gives you a little preview of all the different assets. This particular package only has a single journey. It's a welcome series. As I'm deploying this, I want to create a new folder. So remember the ability to retain existing folder structure. In this case, I didn't retain existing folder structure, but I'm going to create a new folder structure as I deploy. So this just creates a folder called onboarding, and you can see that in the preview. You can actually do nested folders. You can actually do several layers deep if you want to. Just keep entering that / to create additional folders. You can also prepend and append any text you want to the names of the items that you're going to deploy. This is useful if you're going to deploy something that maybe you want people to use as a template. So that's why I put template here, is to say I'm going to deploy this. You can change it if you want to, but this is sort of our golden template that we're going to deploy. And then that kind of alerts the marketer to say, oh yes, this is a template that I'm working with. And you can change the name obviously later once that's been deployed. The last little box over here to the right is a unique timestamp. This is really to identify when you created these. So like which deployment of the package created all of these assets together. So you would get a unique timestamp every time you deploy that in a new environment. You'll never have the same, because it's down to the microsecond. You'll never have the same timestamp twice. But that does allow you to kind of identify that. And the reason for that, at least out of the gate, is we don't have version control yet, or like the ability to manage an existing package that you've created. So because we deploy the package uniquely each time, in other words, we create new assets, new items every single time you deploy a package, that timestamp kind of helps you visualize when something was created. Coming in the next couple of releases will be the ability to manage an existing package, to where you can say, oh, I have this package already, let me go in and edit a couple of items in it. And then you'll get the list and you'll see what's in there. And then you can deploy just a new version of that. So it wouldn't be recreating the asset, it would actually just be updating the asset. So we will be working on that in the next couple of releases. It's not in this first release, but just understand that this is that is something we understand is very important. We get that feedback quite a bit from customers, that hey, that's going to be really important for us as we deploy across environments. Maybe less important on the consulting side, but certainly super important for customers who are just migrating this stuff across business units internally. The next step allows me to input that custom field that I created, right? If you remember, I created the custom or company name custom field, and then I'm going to put my company. So wherever that string exists in any of my emails or whatever assets I have that says company name, it's going to input my company. So whatever generic thing you want to put. So as you're deploying this to customer A, you put customer A's company name. You might have another field that you created for the logo, and you input their logo URL, etc. So you could have all of that in there, and then you change that value every time you're deploying that to a different customer. Of course, you're going to have to then select their send classifications, because that's going to be, again, different across potentially across business units, across enterprises. And then at that point, once you've filled in all those details, you just simply click deploy, and the tool goes out and creates everything. It creates all the assets, journeys, data extensions, event definitions, and it gives you a confirmation that everything was deployed. If I were then, so this is my basic welcome series journey that I packaged. If I were to go to Journey Builder and look up basic welcome series template that I just created, it comes across fully configured. And I clicked validate just to make sure. And because validate in Journey Builder goes and checks, does the data extension exist for my entry source? Does the data extension exist for these decision splits? Does the data extension exist for anything that I'm using for personalization strings in these emails? Everything that I need in there. Yes, it is, and it's ready for activation. So you can see that this is really a pretty powerful tool to be able to take something that you've created in one environment and deploy that anywhere else that you want to. A couple of notes in terms of what's supported versus not. We aren't yet supporting like the new WhatsApp channel. That's not to say we don't create it. We will create an unconfigured activity in the journey for that particular activity. So it's not like we erase it. We just don't support the ability for that activity to go look up any data extensions and package that stuff yet. We have to have some teams make some changes to the product lines in order to support that. Same thing goes for cloud pages. We will copy a cloud pages activity over, but we won't go out and find any dependencies related to it yet until that team kind of helps us support those things. The other thing is, we do, as I mentioned, support Sales and Service Cloud entry events, but we don't validate whether the object exists the same way in the destination view as it existed in the source view. That would be found when you validate the journey if it didn't match. But of course, we assume that you will at least map that at some point to be the same. So understanding that objects and fields can be different across different orgs. So you need to ensure that the destination org is set up the same way as when the source org. But otherwise, if those are set up correctly, it will be ready to activate and it will work as expected. So I just kind of wanted to make those couple notes. Those are questions that I get pretty often. And we will have in our help documentation a long list of what's supported versus not. To be clear, there is nothing about environment that is copied and deployed in these packages. So in other words, there are no roles, there's no setup stuff. We're not doing anything with FTP setup or anything along those lines, but as with automations, we would copy whatever FTP definition is in like a file trigger automation entry, for example. We just don't validate whether all of that stuff is set up correctly, right? We'll copy it all the way it is. We just don't kind of package any dependencies or figure out if what you've configured is right or wrong in that destination view or missing. So before I go into what's coming next, I want to pause and see if there are questions. I don't have the chat window visible to me at the moment, but are there any questions?
So we have had some questions,
Okay.
and you've also got some love for this. And I know when I heard more about it, I spent some time just doing a happy dance, even on the call. And then in the hours afterwards, just on my own, just dancing to the music in my head, because I'm like, this makes a difference. But we have a couple of people, and ideally these people would be willing to come off mute and actually ask their questions. So we have had the standard question, will this presentation be available? Which I think is probably a no, but the recording will be, unless, Rob, you are
right.
publicly sharing this content.
We're not publicly sharing the content itself.
Yeah, so not the slides, but we are recording. The recording will be available, so people can go back and view that. There have been some questions about when it will be released, which again is in the coming weeks, and someone has kindly put in there that you can go on Trust to find out when your particular stack is being upgraded, which is awesome. Thank you for everyone. G, you had a question about the shared content. So G, I don't know if you want to come off mute and ask that question.
I'm going to try. I'm not sure if my mic works correctly.
You good? We hear you.
Yep.
Okay, oh, sorry. Hi. Thanks, Rob, for the presentation. It looks amazing. I was just wondering, when you mentioned shared asset were copied locally, if there was an option to just keep the reference so we could deploy across business unit of the same tenant and reuse the same assets without creating them again and again.
I'm not sure I caught the question. I'm sorry.
When you say like the shared asset would be created locally in the target BU, is there an option to keep the reference to the shared assets instead of recreating it? No. Okay.
There's not.
That's my question. Thank you.
I mean, it's good feedback. The team was aware of it, but it wasn't something that we could make an assumption about in terms of sharing settings. So the decision, I think, was made by the engineering team to just say it's deployed locally. Now, again, once we get into version control, that all changes, right? Like that once you're able to say, okay, I've deployed that already. Now I want to go back and I just want to modify one thing and deploy that one thing as an update. Then potentially you're not recreating that asset again. So then you're just updating. So if you've changed a setting or something at that point, you could still make an update rather than redeploying a new asset every single time, which right now it does. So I think you'll see a lot of those kinds of issues kind of not be an issue once we get the management aspect of it.
Oh, well, that's cool. And shared asset is including shared data extension as well?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And then we have Greg. Greg, are you able to come off mute?
I believe so.
Yep.
So I was just wondering, with you're talking about the different personalization stuff that's built in with it, would that include something like AMP script lookups to data extensions, or is that too removed from the?
It is. It's actually too removed. Let me show you. This is actually our help documentation. So this is just our draft of our help documentation. So just showing you that. But what it does is you put this syntax. You do the double squiggle bracket open MCPM colon, and then you put the kind of the prompt of what the user wants to put in there. And then any string that you want to put in there is fine, but we're not going to necessarily be able to track additional AMP script in there. All we can really do is just say, okay, paste in a value or a URL, a simple text string. So you can't then just insert additional AMP script. That said, we do copy AMP script between environments. And I want to, pull up the supported objects. So this little line about AMP script is critical. So all AMP script is packaged and deployed, but only AMP script that references supported objects by ID is recognized and their dependencies are automatically packaged. So you can put, we'll copy your AMP script and we'll deploy it. As long as that ID is even mentioned in your AMP script, then you can, it'll be deployed as is. So you wouldn't necessarily, if you're using AMP script, even need to use our custom personalization strings here. This is sort of a simple way to throw something in there quickly, if you will. It's not necessarily a super technical, get into AMP script kind of. kind of thing. If that makes sense.
Right. So if it did have a lookup inside of the email, it would pull it as long as that was using the correct ID that it's able to find.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And then Milton, you had a couple of questions.
Sure. Thank you for the session. So like if I create a new journey with like a different data extension and automations with various activities, finally like the automation contexts are injected to journey. Okay. For these cases, of course, we can deploy it. So my question is, if we have already deployed in the production business unit or some other business unit, and we are changing the like for example, I'm adding a couple of fields in the data extension, I'm adding new activity in the journey. So in that case, if I choose the journey, this package manager, will it update the Delta manager and activate it properly? And will it also add the related fields or whichever the activity associated with automation and all?
It doesn't do an update, and that's where this kind of version control that I mentioned before, with like full version management of the package, will help that scenario. I mean, that it will address that exact scenario. Right now, all it does is it will create all of that stuff brand new again. So for some customers, that just essentially means that you would have to go in and delete the things. If you didn't want what you'd created already, you delete what you have in the destination view and deploy the package with the changes you wanted. Obviously, that's not ideal for this ongoing cycle of updates. That's why the team is actively working on the managed package aspect of it. And I again, safe harbor with what's available today, not what's available in the future. But we're actively pursuing that to be in the next 1 or 2 releases, because we understand that's a critical aspect of this feature. So the answer is not yet.
Oh, that would be great. And you told the version control also, right? I mean, in future, you will be like providing the version control feature also.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's a really good thing for us. Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Cool. So we have a couple of, and Milton, you had another question about the warnings.
Yes, like you are showing some status like kind of 10 issues or warnings and all.
Oops.
So is there any specific scenario is there like which we have to take care of it? Suppose some issue comes, do we need to go back and fix it, or we can manage within the after we deploy it?
So you have to go back to the app that has the issue, but at least it tells you what that is. So again, anything with a yellow triangle, you can view it in here. So the issue you can view in this flow, but in order to fix an issue, you have to go back to the source app to say, so if this is a journey issue, and again, anything with yellow triangle is just a warning. Okay. It's not going to prevent you from doing anything. We will still deploy everything. It's just a hey, by the way, you may notice something different. And we've got, again, in our help documentation, in this list of things that are supported and not, then we've got this also kind of, here's what the different colors of the notifications means. And we have very specific text in each one of these. When you would, again, I'm going off of static screenshots, but if I clicked on one of these, it would give you pretty specific language about what you need to fix.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I see, Florin, you've got your hand up.
I'm interested to know if there is any limitation in terms of performance. I'm thinking of accounts with hundreds and hundreds of journeys, probably complex journeys. So yep. How would that work?
So we do have because the upload process is using a Marketing Cloud upload API, it is limited to 50 megabytes. So you just need to be aware of the size of a journey. So if they have really, really big journeys with lots and lots of content in it, that's got lots of image files and all that, I mean, that's what's going to definitely take up more space, right? So the larger your journey, the more content there is, the fewer you can get in a package. So, I mean, general guideline is, most journeys are probably 5 megabytes or less of JSON code, but some may be more. So it's just a matter of testing to see. So you can download, I think, pretty much any size, but you wouldn't be able to deploy if it's over the size limit. So I would just, kind of do some experimentation based on the particular customer's use case and see, okay, if we've got this one giant journey and it's 20 megabytes, then you can fit a couple of those in one package, and you just create different packages for the number of journeys you've got to move.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
We do have a couple more questions, but I also just wanted to check with you, Rob, how much, because you were going to follow on with some other pieces, and how much time you wanted for that, just so that we might
let me just
questions.
I've probably referenced most of these, but I just wanted to point out the kind of the what's coming thing really quick. As you can probably see, if anybody out there has experience with Deployment Manager, you know we've already met and exceeded parity with that. We will leave Deployment Manager out there for a while, just in case there's some crazy use case we didn't think about. But this is not Deployment Manager 2.0. This is conceived and built differently than Deployment Manager was. So there could be something that we missed, but we have every intention of replacing it by the end of the calendar year and removing Deployment Manager from AppExchange. That wouldn't stop support of use of it, but it's not an officially supported app anyway. There isn't much reason that customers or partners or anyone would need to use Deployment Manager, we don't think. Certainly not past the end of the year. So we will definitely be migrating traffic that direction. Again, I mentioned kind of the industry focused best practices, that our partners can create, but Salesforce actually has intentions to also create our own best practice industry focused solutions and kind of sharing those with customers as well. And we obviously want to increase support for those asset types. I mentioned cloud pages, some of the new mobile channels, but also getting into more C360 opportunities in terms of C360 audiences, et cetera. So we want to be able to be sure we're focusing there and on integrations itself. So we're in early discussions about how do we what could we or could we not include as part of the connector? What changes would the connector need to make in order for Package Manager to support some of the key aspects there? So again, we're still in early stages of those, but this is sort of where we're looking at. But all of that said, early adopters get to help shape the roadmap. So any of you that comes and says, hey, we've used this and we really need feature A and B to be top of the list, the more feedback we hear from those people who are early adopters, the more that's going to shape what we work on over the next year, right? So that's the cool thing about product management, is that I get to listen to what everybody says and how everybody's using it and what everyone needs out of it, and be able to change our direction based on what we hear. So I did want to point that out because I know all of you are actively using this all the time. So I'd welcome a channel. Certainly I'll sign up for your channels, and maybe there's a way to share feedback on this particular product that way.
Cool. I think that someone's just got in there with that question. What is the most appropriate way? I feel that there's some enthusiasm and some spirit in wanting to share. So we have the last couple of questions we had. One was from Mohammed. Mohammed, are you there? Are you happy to come off mute?
Yes. Thank you for the presentation, Rob. It's really nice too. My question, actually, I have two questions. The first one is, when you copy a journey and the journey has an email on it, for instance, do you copy the assets within the email also? Maybe I missed this in the beginning. Maybe you already.
Yes. Let me go back to. So when I package it, all I did was I selected the journeys. It found all of these individual assets within the emails within those journeys. I didn't have to select those.
Okay. Cool.
I just selected the 4 journeys, and it found everything else, including data extensions, attribute groups, event definitions, all that stuff. I just selected journeys.
Oh, that's really cool. I do have a second question, if you may allow. So you said that when you deploy to the new business unit, for instance, you use Marketing Cloud API upload, right? Mm-hmm. Is this API something public or it's just private? I mean,
it's internal. It's internal, but that's just sort of, I was just pointing it out because it's one of our restrictions for like the size of the file, basically, just because that API has that limit.
Oh,
I mean, you would use it. You could use it through the UI, like right there. There are ways that you can upload files and all that. So I suppose maybe there's a public version of it, and I'm just not familiar. I guess I should say that I don't know for certain, but but anything that you would use for like file import in Automation Studio, for example, would use the same thing. So there's just limitations on what that can process in terms of amount of data.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
And then we have a question from, is it Sijin? Apologies if I've got your name wrong there.
But no problem. Yeah, so my question is, if you deploy to a certain business unit with some assets that already exist under that name or external key, how would the tool then behave?
So if it's got the same, if it has the same external key, it would error, but we create a new system generated external key every time we deploy. So again, going back to the version idea, like we're creating new system generated IDs every time so that we're not overwriting. And that, eventually we'll be able to update based on what external ID we see. So for right now, we shouldn't have that conflict.
Okay. And another question.
Where it will fail, sorry, I want to point out, because that actually brought up an idea that I had, or not an idea, but one of the things to note is that if a folder already exists, so if you remember in here, if I'm creating an onboarding folder, but an onboarding folder already exists, it's not going to create an onboarding folder. So it would create a new data extension, it would create a new asset, but it wouldn't on the folder side. So it will actually error in creating the folder. So apologies for interrupting.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. And another question, if I may, would it be a good idea to start modifying the JSON file that this deployment manager creates or generates?
You can modify the JSON file as needed. Now, of course, if deployment manager can't recognize some change that you've made, you may get an error. But as long as you're just tweaking something, maybe you want to tweak some property of a journey or something like that. Yeah, you can modify that JSON file as you need to. Maybe you do want to put AMP script in there that wasn't there to begin with, or something along those lines. You can definitely insert that into the JSON before you deploy.
Okay, I'm sure we'll have a lot of fun with that. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Cool. And then Jason's put in one question. We'll probably call that the end of the questions at that point. So Jason.
Sure.
Yeah, really looking forward to trying this. But for businesses that are using paste HTML rather than drag and drop content builder, are images recognized, and do the URLs for those images that have been recognized replaced in HTML, or is that a secondary step that would need to be done post transitioning stuff over?
I'm not familiar enough with that aspect of the functionality feature. I would have to get an answer for you. I want to say that we do handle that. The guy our architect who designed this product actually built the Content Builder SDK. He was the one who created all of that. So this was sort of his sweet spot. So I'm pretty sure what you've suggested is supported, and we would recognize all of that, but I don't want to misspeak. So I can ask him that question and just to verify.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So I appreciate that we're coming up to time. I personally, again, am super excited, and nothing that you have said here has made me any less excited than I was before. And I think from, some of the comments we've had and what people have said, they're eager to get their hands on this. So thank you very much for joining us. Yeah. I'm sure you'll get much love in the form of feedback.
We'll probably get a couple bug reports too, but hey, that's software.
Unintentional features. We all live with those.
They're special features.
Yeah. Some as designed, some not. No. So that's brilliant, lovely, and we're getting thumbs up from a couple of people, which is also awesome. So thank you very much. I can't tell you how grateful I am that you were able to join us at what was relatively late notice.
Yeah, my pleasure.
For this particular meeting. Yeah, and again, you're getting lots of comments in the chat. I just want to highlight this because I think when you're in product management, people are very quick to tell you when they don't like something, and you don't necessarily also get the alternative. Do you know what? This is really great.
Cool. Well, we're excited. Thank you so much.
Lovely. So I think that's it from our end. We will be, if anybody has any questions about this or any information, if you go to the sort of collaboration group, and I'll look to, you know, pick up any of those, and maybe Rob, if we come back on that question about HTML paste, that might be something that we can just put in that particular group.
Okay, sure.
Just to disseminate that with a wider audience.
Yep.
Brilliant. Okay, so with that, we will call that a wrap. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us this week, this month even, and we hope to see you in May, probably the 13th, but somewhere around that.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Terry, don't close up yet, because I need to copy the questions. The questions. In that.
No, I won't. But lovely. Thank you, everyone. I will, however, stop the recording.
Thank you. Yeah, just the questions are on the chat, and I can't copy them.